Up here in the trees, they were safe from those predatory dinosaurs down on the ground. And there were plenty of flying insects for them to catch and eat. But these early flying reptiles were pioneers, and it may be that, just occasionally, they were a little clumsy on the wing. Sometimes, as their bodies lay on the sea floor, they were slowly covered with mud that over millennia eventually turned to stone. Fossils of pterosaurs have been discovered in many parts of the world, in Africa, Asia and South America. But the very first were found here at Solnhofen in southern Germany. This limestone has been quarried for building purposes since Roman times. But those who work here sometimes find something far more valuable than just roof tiles. The discoveries made here make this one of the most important places in all the world for anybody who's interested in pterosaurs. And the perfection of their preservation has enabled us to unlock many of the secrets about how these wonderful animals flew. The Solnhofen limestone formed on the floor of a shallow tropical lagoon, protected from the currents of the open sea by a reef. So its waters were still, and there were few currents to disturb the rotting bodies. The rock here is really extraordinary. When it's fresh, it's very solid, hard building stone. Excellent. But when the frost gets at it, it begins to split. And when it's really weathered, you can open blocks of it like leaves of a book, like that, for example. And sometimes there's something written on these leaves, but mostly nothing. And maybe for I was going to say maybe there's nothing, but on this one there's a perfect little ammonite, a shellfish. This quarry has produced so many fossils that the town's castle has been turned into a museum to house them. The majority are sea creatures. But sometimes there are animals that fell into the water from the skies above, pterosaurs. Here is one that did. It's a kind called Rhamphorhynchus. Not only are its bones still connected as they were in life, you can even see something of its soft parts. This is one of the most perfect pterosaur fossils ever found, and it's a miracle, bearing in mind it's 150 million years old, and yet it's complete in all the tiny details. it had a long, bony tail, long toes on its feet, its spine and its ribs still connected. Its jaws have long teeth, which would have enabled it to snatch fish from the surface of the lagoon. But the most fascinating parts of its anatomy are its wings. They are supported, as in all pterosaurs, by a hugely elongated finger. This is the wing membrane, which in life would have been less than a millimetre thick. And yet it's so perfectly preserved you can see within it all the tiny details of little structures that would have given that membrane strength. There are rows of tiny fibres called actinofibrils, which may have given it precise muscular control right across the wing surface. You can also see from this fossil how pterosaurs managed their wings when they weren't flying. Here, at the base of this long finger, is the miracle joint which enabled the pterosaurs to move their fingers in any direction. And that was a huge advantage because it allowed them to fold up their wings when they landed. The pterosaurs had evolved a brilliant first solution to the problems of travelling through the air. But they were about to become even better aeronauts. About 50 million years after the first winged pterosaur came something much more advanced. It lived in a region of the planet that is now China. Its skeleton was unearthed by one of the world's leading experts on pterosaurs, Dr. David Unwin.
So here's one of the pterosaurs that we found last year in China.
He named it after Charles Darwin. Darwinopterus. Gosh, it's very beautiful. It's almost complete, isn't it?
It's absolutely complete. We could tell that from things like this long tail that we're dealing with a rather primitive kind of pterosaur. These are the classic features of that group. But the revelation came when we looked at the neck, and in particular at the skull, because that's quite astonishing.
Oh, it's huge, isn't it? I mean, that's longer than the body.
The jaws themselves are really very powerful, and it's got some big pointed teeth as well. This is a skull which looks like that of a really advanced pterosaur, but the rest of the body looks really quite primitive. So we've got this weird mix of characters, primitive and advanced, and it's a little bit like Frankenstein's monster.
The big head and pointed teeth of Darwinopterus makes it clear that this was a predator. So it must have been very agile in the air. But this pterosaur wasn't just eating insects. Pterosaur wings were clearly very efficient in the air, but they evolved at a cost. Using wireframe computer simulations of pterosaur movement, David Unwin has investigated how they moved on the ground.
What I've done is to feed the vital statistics of this pterosaur into the computer and build this model that you can see on the screen.
It's easy to see that walking on flat surfaces would have been quite difficult for it.
Did they always move around like that?
Well, we can try and get him to stand just on the hind limbs alone, like a bird. But when we do that, I think you can see he's not very well balanced at all, looks quite unstable, and worse still, the tail is actually catching on the ground. So now we can see him standing in this four-legged pose. The wing membranes, which are attached to the hind limbs, get in the way somewhat, so it doesn't look all that comfortable on the ground. And in fact, when we look at the claws on the hands and the toes, we find that they're really not well suited to life on the ground at all.
Where's he off to now?
And now we see he looks a lot more happy just hanging up there, just as they would have done on trees and cliffs back in the Jurassic.
So early pterosaurs, with their long tails, probably spent most of their time hanging from vertical surfaces like cliffs and the trunks of trees. But if they were to spread beyond those environments, they would have to change the shape of their bodies. This fossil is 140 million years old. It has the enlarged head of an advanced pterosaur, but its tail is different. It's become much shorter. And this short-tailed species wasn't alone. It was clearly a very successful modification. There were many like it with these new-style short tails and reduced hind flight membranes.